So we're excited to invite these three experienced entrepreneurs in the built environment electrification space to share their journeys. Electrifying and decarbonizing our built environment is a transformational climate solution that's ready to be deployed today, and we've brought in a broad group of experts in the space. So first question for y'all, please just tell us a bit about your background, what you consider your own kind of founder's journey, define that how you like, what your organization does, and what excites you about the space that you're in. First up, let's go Panama. Bartholomew, founder and executive director of the Building Decarbonization Coalition.
Thank you, Brian. And thanks everybody for joining in on the call today and taking part. It's great to be here with you. I'm calling in from Oslo, Norway. Right now. I was kicked out of the house by my family, and so I'm out here. A beautiful view of the sunset in Oslo with you all, and that's a founder's experience right there. You call in from all over the world. You get to travel all the time. I run an organization called the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and it's a coalition of utilities, manufacturers of heating equipment like space heating, water heating, cooking, the design and construction community, nonprofits, and government agencies. And we work together to come up with both policy and market solutions to be able to deploy a whole bunch more electrification of buildings. I started this organization back in 2018 after a medium long-term life in government. I'm a recovering bureaucrat, spent 15 years in state government in Sacramento, working a variety of agencies, California Energy Commission, the California Legislature. And for me, one of the biggest things that helped me do the work I do now is one of my mentors. Early on, my first mentor out of college really impressed upon me the need to build out a network and to really build a community. And so when I came back to California, where we're based out of in 2017, the 15 years in government had allowed me to build a really strong network of all those different actors that I had mentioned, the utilities, the manufacturers, et cetera. And so I was a trusted voice for them. And when I came back and looked around and we saw that there was a lot of different activities and people talking about building electrification, but nobody was really talking to each other. If anything, the talking to each other was fighting with each other between advocates and utilities and manufacturers and the like. And because of the trust that we had built, so we were able to bring together this coalition of folks to work on the 80% that we all agree on, in the hopes that progress made on that 80% could help us in the remaining 20% that we fight about normally in this space. And so our organization has grown from just myself in 2018 to now we got just about 45 staff people across the country. We're a nonprofit organization, and we're hiring about 7 more. I just put the link in the chat. Great to see so many job seekers on the call. We're hiring great people for great positions right now. We get most of our revenue from foundations, family foundations. And so that's been a muscle as a founder I've really had to learn, is how to raise money and how to raise capital. And so definitely later in the talk, we'll talk some about that. But that's who we are. That's what we work on. And that's been some of my journey. And I'll throw it back over to you, Brian. Looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thanks for your perspective. Nicole Tisvar, CEO and founder of Simbi Homes. Why don't you say hello to the people?
Okay, hi, yeah, Nicole Tisvar. Like you said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Simbi Homes. We are a green developer. We do new homes and deep energy retrofits in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. And I have sort of what I call an unconventional background. I have a PhD in education and building a home for my family. By the way, this is not a sort of level of chaos that I recommend to anybody, but while I was building the home, I sort of fell in love with the process of building a home. And so when I was done and I defended my dissertation, I decided to make home building my passion. The other thing I realized very early on in the process is that there weren't a lot of people in the custom home building world that were real specialized in sustainability. And it was also extremely expensive at the time to go green on your homes. So I decided that, if I was going to get involved in this, I wanted to try to change the industry for the better. So fast forward now, it's 12 years later, and really, I have taken a long time to kind of learn the business from the ground up. But now we are really fully cemented into the net zero movement. We exclusively focus on net zero and net zero ready homes, basically. And we also, because I realized too that building houses out in the field is not necessarily going to change the industry, we decided to make every single one of our projects a demonstration home for a magazine or a larger publication. So we started a few years ago. We did what's called Simbi Duplex 1. It was a side-by-side duplex. It was featured in Custom Builder magazine. Last year, we did the Regeneration House. There's a picture of it behind me here, which was a deep energy retrofit of a 100-year-old Victorian. And then we did an in-law suite addition, completely age-in-place addition, which is what you're looking at here. And that was for pro remodelers, Model Remodel 2022. And then this year, we're doing a case study with the Journal of Light Construction. Super excited about this project. It's called the Queen of Zero, and it's a ground up Queen Anne Victorian home that is going to be of net zero as well. So by doing these demonstration homes, we link with publications, we do videos, blogs. I write for the Journal of Light Construction. We tell the story of these homes and hopefully help other people understand that there is another way to build, and we can build better, and we can decarbonize in the built environment.
Awesome. Exciting. Weldon Kennedy is the CMO and co-founder of Channing Street Copper. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm at Channing Street Copper Company. We make energy storage equipped appliances. So anyone in the energy space will be familiar with energy storage systems as a concept. It really means a battery. What it means is we're integrating a battery into an appliance, and what that allows you to do is just plug in a high amperage, high voltage appliance into a normal 120 volt outlet. Now that sounds really simple and banality with lots of numbers, but when you get down to it, it's talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of consumer savings across the United States when we talk about electrifying all of the residences in America. So that's a bit of money that we can save consumers. And in the meantime, it also makes residential electrification dramatically easier for utilities because they don't have to worry about this giant spike in usage and building all of the infrastructure to accommodate a giant spike when everyone turns on their appliances in the evening. So it's great for consumers, great for utilities. My background, I have the privilege of being able to choose work based on the values that motivate me. So I would say those guiding values are fairness, justice, equality, and sustainability. I have been able to pursue those values through a number of means, working for political parties and electing officials. I worked for nonprofits in the advocacy space. I worked for Bono, advocating for international development funding. I found that actually looking at, when doing international development, some of the best ways to make a difference was actually job creation and making products, like sustainable products, in a good way. So I started the first running shoe company that was making running shoes in Africa, first carbon neutral certified running shoes as well. Kenya's electricity grid's over 90% renewable energy. It's awesome. Then came back to the US and have this opportunity to help communicate with people about the joy of our all electric future. That's really the name of the game, is that I'm here and I'm doing this because I want to spread the opportunity and the optimism that we have a bright future ahead of us. Even though climate change is a great challenge, the things that we do to address it can make our lives better. So that's what brings me here.
There are so many things I want to ask and so many side streets I want to go down, but I know that we are here to kind of focus on the experience of the founder. And I want to say again, we'll be posting resources because we have some really great resources for anyone who wants to do a deeper dive on any organizations. But I want to stick with you for a second, Weldon, and want to hear from all of you as well too. The kind of number one most requested challenge we find in our community is people looking for a co-founder. We have our kind of like matching service where you can be matched with a one-on-one every other week. And we try to specifically find people looking for a co-founder. But I know with Channing Street Copper, I believe you have 3 other co-founders, all from very different backgrounds. What was the process like of you all finding one another?
Sure. There's actually 5 of us, if you believe it.
Oh, goodness. I got to get that
true
fact
handful,
checker.
In the very literal sense of the word. Copper started as a project of Other Lab. Other Lab is an incubator space in San Francisco. 2 of our 5 co-founders were part of a group that wrote a grant to the Department of Energy to fund the fundamental research at looking at integrating batteries into appliances in terms of principally with a focus on deploying energy storage at the edge of the grid, because that's like the most efficient place to have energy storage, is where you don't have to have a whole bunch of electrical work and transmission lines for it to be used. So they wrote that grant with Saul Griffith, the author of Electrify, founder of Other Lab and Rewiring America, a bunch of other things in this space. And then as that grant started going along, it kind of started collecting other people. So the other three of us all kind of joined into that project while it was still kind of in incubation at Other Lab, and then spun out. So I would say, look, if you have anything that you think the government will fund, and particularly that is, things that require a little bit of research, require building in atoms, typically, physical objects, government grants are a great way to do that. And Other Lab is a great place to house a project like that. So I would say, if you're like, hey, I want to go get a DOE grant, Department of Energy grant, or an NSF grant, National Science Foundation grant, or there's a military grant for something, anything that is like that, housing it within an institution that wins a lot of government grants and has a structure set up for doing your HR and your payroll and the physical space for doing this. Other Lab's a great place. Definitely knock on their door, and that helps facilitate finding the process of founders. But I would say, just like the number of people that you bump into, like the more interactions you have, that is exponentially increasing the amount of luck that you will have in terms of finding great people. So like, go to every event, go sit down with people in coffee. Don't just get on Zoom with them. Like, go find the humans that you want to talk to. And at the end of a conversation, ask if they were in your shoes, who are the next three people they would talk to if they were doing what you're doing. And, of those three, one will convert into something, and, you continue that searching process. But yeah, finding co-founders, like, assume that, a startup is like 7, 8 years. The average American marriage is 7 to 8 years. So assume that you're getting married to this person or these people. So it should be a process that takes time, right? Like, you don't just like get married when you meet someone on day one. There is a considered and determined process of the people who you want to spend the majority of your daytime hours with. So that's fine if it takes some time.
Awesome. So Nicole, you have the perspective of both being, a sole proprietor in your consulting business, and then also having a couple other co-founders for Simbi Homes. Talk about that kind of calculus and your experience finding those founders.
Yeah, no, I think it's sort of the best of all worlds, really. And I should say too that I've been through different iterations of my companies. Galaxy Homes was our custom business for a long time, where we actually had a big staff. We had, over a dozen employees. I don't know if you call that big, but and multi-million dollars in business every year. And I felt like, yeah, we were really busy and we were getting a lot of stuff done, but we weren't actually moving the mission forward around sustainability. And that's why I decided, like 5-6 years ago, to really draw back and become more of a very small company and be very deliberate about that. I think there's a lot of advantages to being a sole proprietor. So when I do consulting work, when I work with clients, when I do in the work I do on social media, when I work with manufacturers, when we do the show homes, I'm predominantly working on my own, but with a network of friends and colleagues who are all experts in this field. And in a way, it's great because I can be more nimble. I'm more in the driver's seat, I think, about what I choose to do. But at the same time, I have the benefits of working with a vast group of wonderful people.
Great. And I'd love to get your perspective as well, Panama, as someone, at least in this organization, that has gone as a solo founder, the context for that, and how that you've navigated that throughout your career otherwise.
It can be lonely, a solo founder. And I think for at least my experience, is like a lot of self-questioning and questioning about direction and approach. But what I found is the most important thing is to surround myself with really talented people and to be really honest about my own strengths and weaknesses, and try to really balance my weaknesses with people that are strong in those areas. But, usually things that you're strong in are things that you like. And so you like people that have some of those similar strengths. And so you don't want to get people that like balance you out but irritate you and you don't want to work with. And so finding somebody that can complement your strengths, but you actually enjoy being married to is I think critical. So that dating process it can take a while, but there's that saying about like hire fast, fire fast, and so you got to bring somebody in when you have the work, and then you also have to be really honest that if it's not working out, you got to jettison them, because that bad marriage or that bad partner at a really high level drains the entire organization, the morale for the entire organization. So complementing your strengths, doing enough diligence to make sure they're right, and then breaking that relationship up when it goes sour on the quicker side. That'd be some of my lessons learned.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I want to stick with you for a second, Panama, because while the focus of the event is geared toward the founder experience, the majority of the folks in the community I mentioned are looking to get a job or make their own job more climate and sustainability focused. So based on your wealth of experience in government and bridging stakeholders, what do you think are the main deterrents to like this large scale mobilization of talent? And where do you feel like the opportunities are for people who are navigating it right now?
It's an incredible time to be hiring in climate. I don't know if if it feels the same way for job seekers in climate. Our job applications right now, we're a nonprofit, we're not a tech startup, we're not a manufacturer. We're getting between 1,000 to 1,500 applicants per role coming in. It's an incredibly overwhelming experience right now. So we're not seeing a real dearth in interest. What we are seeing, though, is people having some challenges in translating how their skills from their previous work will come over and work in the climate space. And so the candidates that are really standing out in our hiring processes are the ones that have really given some thought to our mission, what we're trying to do, and then being able to translate not the story of where they've been so much, but the story of how where they've been can lead them to be a powerful advocate or a powerful force for change within our organization and within our movement. So I think that, all the climate stuff, you can learn it pretty quick. Building decarbonization, the climate science, that stuff you can all learn pretty quick. But the people skills, the collaboration skills, working in an organization, working in a startup, those are the things that I find are much, much harder. And the things that we look for much more than expert in building decarbonization coming out. And so really being able to stand out by showing that you've thought about the job in which you're applying for and how your skills resonate with what we're looking for, and then emphasizing how you can, once you're in an organization, really excel. That's been the differentiator for us on hires.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Nicole, I'd love to get your perspective as well too. You kind of like operate in a slightly different section of the industry. So what are your observations to that?
Yeah, I totally agree about, the whole thing about trying to find talent. I think we did, in our first few years, I think we hired and fired like, 30 people, something like that. It was crazy. And that's another reason why I'm trying to bring my education background really into the work I do. I understand that maybe not so much in Panama space when you're looking at policy, but when you're looking at construction and boots on the ground, we are completely lacking in the cadre that we need of qualified, talented individuals to get the work done. So that's why I'm starting up an initiative now called the Retrofit Lab. I know Brian's familiar with the Retrofit Lab. Right now, it really is just a concept. We've done a few pilot classes here and there, but we're trying to fundraise. We're trying to get money from DOE right now to get this off the ground. And the idea is that we take a project like Simbi Homes would normally be doing, like a deep energy retrofit or some kind of flip or something, and we open it up to the community. So whether it's neighbors or specifically contractors, people who work in the field, and they can come in and learn and take classes and get the certifications that they need. So then hopefully we can replicate our strategies around decarbonization on a much larger scale. And the idea is that Retrofit Lab comes in, we fix up a house, we have all this great education around it, and then we withdraw and we move to the next neighborhood, right? So hopefully we'll be getting that off the ground in 2024.
Great. Yeah, and we'll be sending as part of the resources from this information about Retrofit Lab specifically. That's I live in the DC area, and that's how I first heard of you, Nicole. Tuned into one of those. Weldon, any perspectives you want to offer the people on kind of like navigating this talent transition into climate?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I totally agree with what Panama is saying, that so much of this stuff is like, you know, the fundamentals are easy to learn. The skills that you have in a job are what really matter. And so it's like, it's really where you're working. There's a whole bunch in this space that I will say is by the standards of the culture that I come from in a work environment is totally unsexy work. There is a lot of just not glamorous stuff to be done. And so I was just at RE Plus. It's the big solar and energy storage expo. And like, guys, this is the big boom, right? Like, you know, there's a gold rush happening. And this expo just basically like doubled in size 1 year to the next there. But what is it? It's a bunch of people selling and deploying batteries that look like shipping containers into funny places, and people who are putting solar panels over parking lots and over canals. And like, that's the work, right? Like, you know, it's the work of doing a planning and permitting process to deploy solar panels on the roof of Walmart. Like, and that's, you know, and so there's just so much work that needs to be done, and so much. So like, you know, as Panama says, like BDC is cool, right? BDC is super cool, but there's 1,500 people applying for every job there. I mean, Jesus. Oh God, I mean, you got to win the lottery to get into that place. And they have, right? Everyone who is there is awesome, and they did win the lottery, and they're amazing. But I would just say that, like, remember to look at Schneider Electric. Remember to look at your utility jobs in your city, like the municipal jobs, because they're like, if you want to be working on climate and you have the ability and luxury to make that choice, there are good, well-paying jobs that are reliable and steady, that are just deploying all of this new infrastructure and shifting our world. And like, they're, you know, but they might not be necessarily at the coolest startup or advocacy organization out there.
Yeah, we're always trying to figure out at Work on Climate how to best, you know, make the climate work mainstream and to like help folks navigate that talent transition. Based on, I have some ideas based on what you all have talked about so far, but I just want to maybe open it up. If any of you, from where we sit, a Slack community of 25,000 people putting on events, posting jobs, like what role could this community play in that, based on what you all have identified? Any panelists feel moved to speak to that? All right. So next question. Gaining access to capital is a front of mind topic for a lot of our founders. We have a really interesting cross-section of different models represented in this group. So I'm curious to hear about the approach you've taken to fund your respective endeavors. And I'll start with Panama, because you kind of alluded to it in your intro a little bit as it relates to the Kevin Foundation. So can you talk about the capital piece of the equation?
Sure. So we have about a $12 million a year budget. We're probably going to get up to about $16 million a year next year. We raised that from about 15 different family foundations. And then we also get some money for some fee-for-service work for the state of California as well. It was definitely a new skill set, a new muscle for me to build. Like I had before this job, I had never really raised any kind of significant capital. As I said, I always worked in state government, and it's pretty set budgets and approaches for how you get money. And so obviously raising money in the nonprofit space is different than raising it in the for-profit space. But what I was taught early on by one of my fundraising mentors was ultimately funders are looking at you as an individual and whether or not they believe in you and your story, and are you going to be able to accomplish what you're setting out. And so you need to be able to go in and make them confident in you and your vision, and your ability to be able to pull it off has been the most important thing. And once I really started to embrace that and understand it, and that's not to say like, lie or make stuff up or like be overly confident, but just the importance of confidence and the importance of being able to articulate the path that you want to take your organization on, or your movement on. That has completely changed my approach to fundraising, and it's made us a lot more successful at it. The second thing is I have an amazing partner in my organization. My development director is just incredible. And so having a key partner that I can trust and is a workhorse and can work with us, everything from identification to the writing, to the preparation, just having a key partner so you're not alone in the journey. We've hired a number of people in our organization who are former founders themselves. And one of the main reasons they left their organization to come to ours is because they didn't want to do fundraising anymore. It's incredibly lonely effort. And so just encourage you to not take that all on yourself. Like look for a co-founder who can be like a really good partner, or a deputy who can be a great partner for you in this effort, because this by itself can burn you out and be a lonely place for you.
Thanks for that. Weldon, you want to talk to the approaches you've taken both with Channing Street Copper and previous ventures as it relates to capital?
Sure. I'll stay away from the nonprofit fundraising because I would say that is a more emotionally heavy toll, and Panama nails it. Look, I'll say the challenge on raising money is there's a distance between the money hitting your bank account and the results. And it's about convincing people that the distance between those two things is smaller than they thought. So government grants are great for this because like they know there's a distance between those two things, right? They're like, hey, we're going to go out on a wing and we're going to put this money out here long before the results happen. And that's okay. That's great. Like Kickstarter campaigns, I've run multiple crowdfunding campaigns. They're pretty good for that too, right? Like you get the money in because people know there's a distance between income and results. Like debt financing, we're making a bunch of objects, right? Like debt financing to make those things is like that, but they have to be much closer together, right? Venture capital or raising equity money in any format, those results have to be closer together, and you have to be like, hey, actually, it's not some new results that are different in the future. It's just like more of the current results that we've got. So telling that story about how you bring their money and the results you'll produce to be the narrowest band of time possible, I think that's the game of fundraising. And Panama's right. It's like when there's a one of you, it's making them believe in the you. It's when you have a team or you have a system in place that is able to produce those results very quickly. It's helping them understand how your system produces the right results faster than anyone else's system. So yeah, but that's how I think about solving that challenge. Yeah, it sucks. It's totally just getting punched in the face a lot. Like fundraising is like, that is the you'll pardon my language here. It's the poop sandwich you got to eat every day if you want to start something new.
Thank you for that language excuse. Nicole, how about you? What's been your perspective there?
Yeah, so interestingly, I mean, in previous lives, I worked in government and I worked in nonprofits. I wrote mini grants and raised money that way. But when I became an entrepreneur and started to try to fundraise for Simbi Homes, I actually had no success whatsoever. So I've bootstrapped everything. But I can tell you some of these stories, which is quite amazing. It wasn't that long ago that I started trying to raise money from traditional real estate investors, maybe 5 years ago. And I found that it was all an old boys network. I was basically treated differently because I was a woman. I had investors tell me that I wasn't aggressive enough. I don't know if they wanted me to like stand on the table and beat my chest. I'm not sure, but I got those comments. I got, a guy asked me out. How about we go look at some lots, just you and me, I mean, the crazy stuff. This is what happens in these rooms. And I actually have a Sheryl Sandberg story too, where I was like asking for the bathroom key and nobody could find the woman's bathroom key. I had a guy say, well, your business plan looks really good. And he was super surprised. And he said, I thought you were just some like housewife who watches too much HGTV. That's an exact quote. So yeah, I spent a couple of years doing that. And what did Weldon say? It's like getting punched in the face. It was very much like getting punched in the face. And so I pivoted and decided I was going to try to bootstrap things. And I haven't gone back to investors yet. But I'm thinking I'm at a point now, especially with Retrofit Lab, that I want to look for more like impact investors. And the other advice I have about fundraising, and this comes from back in the time when I was doing nonprofit work, is I really truly believe in creating public-private partnerships so that you're not just relying on grants and government money. So Retrofit Lab is designed to bring in a traditional, it could be a flipper perhaps, who can, work with me. And then the government provides the educational resources that we need, and we work together and then sell the property at the end for a profit. So that's where I'm going with it right now, is trying to put together this public-private partnership funding.
Thank you. Next question is getting your, product or your organization's work in front of people, both, validating the idea, finding your way in front of early customers. What's been your approach to that? We'll start with Weldon.
Sure. Do it before you're ready. Like, show the first thing you've got. Like, the market is honest. There'll be a bunch of people who are just really nice to you, but you'll hear the critiques, you'll hear the real stuff. So I mean, like, literally, okay, so I'll take copper. What we did, we took a commercial range, we found a commercial range, we gutted it and built a kind of Frankenstein's monster version of the thing that we wanted to do, as a way to show like what the potential of this technology was, right? And like, this is a thing that you would never have in your home, right? It's not a solution. It's not a commercially viable product whatsoever. We took it out to farmers markets. We took it to events. We showed people and we're like, hey, look, this is what you could do. This could be the thing. And just like, people were just like ready to take it off our hands. Like we were going to get mugged for this thing. It was so excited about it. Right. And so then, okay, great. Oh, and then you listen carefully to like, what are the things that are a barrier? I've done crowdfunding campaigns multiple times before in various contexts, and this is the same thing. You make like a prototype that is convincing on video, and then you're like, this is a thing. This is the thing we're going to make, and see if people want it, right? If they want that thing. But yeah, like I would like, in terms of getting market feedback, like as clever as you think the idea is, as good as you think the thing you're going to build will be, like go out and start talking to people really early, as well ahead of your being ready to do that, and then just be humble and listen and learn and adjust.
Yeah, sounds like somewhat by any means necessary, going out to the farmers markets or what have you. Nicole, how about you?
Yeah, early customers are so important, right? For a lot of different reasons. And there's a couple things, advice I have about that. One is because I became a spokesperson for this industry, now I have a lot of exposure, right? And so I go to conferences and present, and I'm on social media, and I do a lot of articles and things like that. Awards, winning awards is really big too. And so once you develop that kind of repertoire of touch points, then people are going to find you, right? And so that's what's been happening for us, and it's been very exciting. The other thing I've learned, this is after many years, is to turn down the customers who are not sharing your mission and your values and who are not supporting you. Because honestly, you can't waste that kind of time with them. And they might still love your vibe, but if they haven't bought into energy efficiency and they're not willing to go that extra step with you, then you say, I'm so, thank you, but I'm just not the right contractor for you, or, whatever. So that's what I would say about those early customers. But everything Weldon was saying too, just like use them as a sounding board. It's so absolutely important, and it's going to help pave the way as you move into the mainstream, right? So important.
Thanks, Nicole. Panama, anything to add?
I mean, maybe just a comment on the space that Weldon and Nicole and I all work in, of the built environment. It's a real interesting one in climate tech, because we're looking at a situation of a lot of mandates coming up. We have states like California, New York, Washington, others that are saying like all future buildings are going to be all electric, and in probably about 6 or 7 years, we're going to say no more gas appliances allowed to be sold. And we expect another 15 states over the next few years to be doing it. And so in some ways, it's this amazing opportunity coming up with the mandates. But if you look at the current market of like plumbing and HVAC and appliance sales, is like really, and building, it's really traditional. It's a lot of really like big, long time established players who aren't catching on with innovation and where this is going. And so the disruption opportunity is really great right now. And when you mix like mandates and an out-of-date market model with this real passion for climate coming for customers right now, it's just it's ripe for people to be getting involved in this right now and be able to get a beachhead for as we move towards large scale mandates for this industry. And it's kind of unique among climate tech industries.
Can I jump into just like +1 on a thing Nicole said? Just the breaking up with the wrong customers. Also, like the key flag, like the warning sign that I found again and again is like the people who ask you for a discount, they're not your friends. Like your friends pay full price and they will like support you all the way. Your partners, give them a cut. Right. You know, if someone is a business partner and like they're going to, you know, yeah, you give them a cut of that profit, they're getting 10% as like a revenue share or something. But if someone is just asking you for an out and out discount, not a good customer and not your friend.
Right. Yeah. My like in an earlier life, I did music professionally, and I actually founded and ran a music company. And when you said the discounting bit, I had like so many flashbacks. So, right. All right. I want to ask one more question, and then we'll do some wrap up stuff. We might be able to circle back to some other questions. But you know, another thing Panama, I think, said in his intro was the importance of him for a mentor or a select group of mentors. So I want to ask you all about the role of mentorship and community in your story. So I guess I'll start with you, Panama.
Yeah, it was incredibly important. I mean, I was like pulled out of college by my mentor into Sacramento, and I thought it was only going to be, you know, maybe a 3-month journey, and then I would head off to go work in solar or something, and ended up being a 15-year stint in Sacramento. And it was because of my mentor, and my mentor really impressed upon me the need for empathy and to really understand the partners that you're working with, understand your customer, understand who you're working against. And you would always say, like, don't take any meetings in your own office. Like, go and meet in their office, see in the world they live in, and the like, what's the vibe in their office? Like, how do people treat each other? Really understand who you're talking to, and so you can relate to them. And so at our organization, you know, we're a coalition. And it's probably set up because of my mentor that way, where we do a lot of work on empathy mapping and really understand, like, what are the pain points that manufacturers of HVAC and water heaters and stoves, like, what do they feel in this transition? Like, what are they afraid of? What are utilities afraid of? What do they need? And so my mentor, I think, has really done a big part to shape who I am and the approach that we take for our organization and what I put my staff through on the daily basis. And then on the fundraising side, luckily, you know, just in the last few years, found an amazing mentor on the fundraising side that's been, as I said, completely changed my whole approach to fundraising. So it's been critical just to have somebody that really knows what they're doing, that you can look up to and look for advice for. So I can't say enough about how much it's really allowed me to have probably any success in this space.
Thank you. Nicole, how about you? Role of either mentors or community in your success?
Yeah, community building, networking, mentors, all absolutely key, for sure, have helped me along the way. A couple of things, sometimes it can be very intentional. Like there's 2 volunteer groups that I'm really involved in. One is the DMV Net Zero Energy Coalition. I've met a great many wonderful people through that coalition, and we've done great projects together. And the other one is Green Builder Media's ESG leadership team. We've been working on putting together a document around ESG. And again, this is a national group. I get to interact with a lot of other CEOs and policymakers and other people. And it's opened so many doors for me, literally. But I have to say, there's also the accidental networking. Like, I remember my first job in journalism came because I was there was an editor in the building space who walked his dog past my office every day when we had an office in Hydesville, and we got to talking, and that led one thing to another, and then we had a show home on our hands. So, you know, you just never know where you're going to meet those people, but it's so important to be out there. Like Panama said, go out where other people are and get to know them, for sure.
How about you, Weldon? Any perspective?
Yes, and quickly, thanks for everyone sending like direct messages in the chat. Can you just like, it's also overwhelming. Just hit me up on email afterwards. Weldon@channingcopper.com. That's lovely. Thanks, everyone. Yes, I have never had a mentor, and it breaks my heart. It's something I've like yearned for and craved my entire life, and I've just never had someone who's like that person. So if anyone's like, hey, I would mentor you, just give me a call. I'm well in for it. I'm hungry for that action. I've had a lot of communities of people who challenge me, lift me up, help, you know, push me up the ladder, and next thing you know, I'm pulling them up the ladder, and we go back and forth and everything. That has been hugely beneficial, and I try to spend as much time as I can engaging with communities of like-minded people who want to accomplish the same things in the world. I would say that the thing that I have found on the other side of that mentorship thing, a group of friends and I started an organization that was training young activists, advocating principally around social justice issues. And the experience, like we were all in our late 20s at the time, and suddenly became like mentors to a bunch of people who were not much younger than us. Like we were like 28 and they were like 24, right? So these are effectively peers. The experience of like kind of forcing ourselves to be like mentors was really amazing and transformative. And I would say so many people on this call, right? You're talking about like people who are making a career transition. You have experience, right? And finding people for whom you can add value and help them, like realizing that maybe you are the mentor. I found hugely valuable for my own personal growth in terms of how I engage with others in a professional context. And it helped me, I think, transition from seeing myself as this kind of like, you know, young whippersnapper. Oh, I'm smart and clever and young, and I'll work all the hours. And, you know, that was kind of like my professional identity, is like I would and then like transitioning the professional identity to one that is someone like, oh, I have experience that is useful. And that transition was hard for me because it was how I understood myself, and only by helping others could I like make that transition. And so I like, you know, if you have experience, I imagine everyone here has a bunch of experience, and if you are not mentoring someone else, just think that poor someone could be like me and want a mentor desperately and not have one. So please go out and mentor some others.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to let each of our wonderful panelists take one more opportunity to both talk about their organization and a little bit of a call to action for people who are interested in learning more or doing more. Let's start with you, Weldon.
Yeah, great. If you want to learn more about Channing Street Copper Company, go to channingcopper.com. Find us also on LinkedIn, Channing Street Copper Company or Channing Street Copper Co. on LinkedIn. If you want one of our ranges, sign up for the waitlist. At this point, if you sign up for the waitlist, you're probably in the late 2024, early 2025 range for delivery. There are a few people who want them, and we need to make them a lot faster, which is really exciting. But yeah, you can do that. If you are an electrical or mechanical engineer, you probably aren't having much of a hard time finding jobs in the climate space, but because there's a lot of electrical and mechanical engineering to be done. But we, you know, are going to be hiring more of those folks in particular. So just hit me up directly, either on LinkedIn or Weldon@channingcopper.com. And yeah, love to chat about that.
Hope you're on mute, Brian, but you might have been saying me. Thank you all for the time. Enjoyed talking with you. Ultimately, our effort is to mainstream electrification and completely eliminate pollution from buildings. And that's going to take everything from policymakers to industry leaders to individuals. And so we try to serve everybody. We have a regular monthly newsletter that comes out. One's coming out today that kind of covers everything happening on building decarbonization in the last month or coming up in the next month. So it's a great way to kind of like get into some of the language of building decarbonization or electrification and see who's doing what, where, what groups are working on what policy is moving. And then we also run a consumer education campaign that's much more focused on building owners and the tools that they need in order to be able to make this switch. And so like access to all the incentives from the federal to the local level, searchable by zip code, or a pre-vetted list of contractors that are actually going to help you replace your furnace with a heat pump instead of talk you out of it. And we also have a newsletter from there that can really helps people work through some of the basics of electrification. So would love to see all sign up for those newsletters or take part in our efforts. And through the Switches On program, we also have an ambassador program where you can become an ambassador and we can support you with materials to help your neighborhood or your community electrify as well. And then, as I said at the beginning, we're hiring a ton right now. All sorts of different people, from marketing to campaigners to people that work on software and technology. And so buildingdecarb.org/careers to see some of the openings we have right now. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Panama. How about you, Nicole?
Yeah, so if you want to follow along, especially with our most recent project, Queen of Zero, the best place to find us is on Instagram. We're at Simbi Homes, and we post regular videos there. And even for if you just have a home or you rent a home, you might be interested in some of our tips. We do like 5 pro tips around a lot of different topics around, insulation and air sealing and mechanicals and other things too. And also, I think in terms of call to action, Brian and I have been talking about maybe actually adding to the Slack community here something specific on decarbonization in residential buildings. I'd be very interested to talk to people who want to get more involved, particularly on the policy side, which I haven't done a lot of work lately, but I do know there are other organizations that are focused on this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but really just kind of navigating through some of these other groups and figuring out who can really tackle some of the hard issues we have around changing an entire industry. Really, the big production builders are not on board with this yet. So we've got a lot of work to do.